Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the July 23rd, 2019 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting to order. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance as well as those watching at home or streaming online. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Campuris, Director Fordson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Wyrick, Mayor Scott.
Present. Now let me recognize Director Adcock, who will give our invocation.
Turn my light on, please. There. Thank you. Would you bow? Dear Heavenly Father, we are here today to do the city's business. We ask you to be with us and help us, Lord, as we make decisions for all the people. Guide and direct everything we do and say that will be pleasing to you. Be with our officers, our firefighters, and all those who represent us in dealing with the citizens, that they each, Lord, would be safe and back to their homes this evening. Guide and direct now everything we say and do, we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Maybe I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one modification to tonight's agenda. That's item M1, which is a resolution dealing with the transfer of title of a landmark property.
So move to add it.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes to add M1. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda for items 1 through 11, along with M1.
The consent agenda consists of a motion to accept the 2018 audit, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Hug and Holland Equipment in the amount of $399,812 for the purchase of one Volvo articulated dump truck for the Public Works Department, Solid Waste Division, and for the purposes. A resolution to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution number 14,835 of August the 7th, 2018, and Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution 14,856 of September 8th, 2018, to reflect the proper account as to the source of funds, to authorize a contract with River City Hydraulics Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $35,180 to provide warranties for a rear loader sanitation truck as authorized in Resolution number 14,835, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with D&J Red Iron and Aggregates Ltd. in an amount not to exceed $61,176.35 for raised crosswalks on Sawgrass Drive at Dorado Beach Drive, and for the purposes. Funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Contact Network LLC, doing business as Inline Construction, in an amount not to exceed $2,512,043.14 for the University Avenue Traffic Operations Improvement, and for the purposes. A resolution to transfer property located at 1415 Valmar Street and 3420 West 15th Street by quitclaim deed under the Land Bank Side Lot Program, and for the purposes. A resolution to transfer property located at 2806 West 13th Street by quitclaim deed under the Land Bank Side Lot Program, and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the mayor and city clerk to execute any documents necessary to accept a donation of property located at 3519 West 11th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to submit the approved 2019 annual action plan for CDBG home and HOPWA entitlement funds to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the city manager to execute a one-year lease agreement with Crane Investments LP and Kelly Commercial Realty LLC in the amount of $214,831.32 for office and storage space for the Little Rock Police Department, and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the city manager to enter into a 7th renewal contract for workers' compensation stop-loss coverage with Safety National Casualty Corporation for 1 year, effective July 1st, 2019, and for the purposes. A resolution to transfer title of 3620 Maryland Avenue to Springer & Springer LLC via quitclaim deed for property sold by the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs, and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Before we move, we have a question from Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, on the transfer of properties for land bank from the land bank, how are we qualifying or quantifying neighborhood revitalization? First question. Second question, I noticed that Mrs. Wright paid, I think, $500 each for her properties, and Springer LLC only paid $250 for their lot. So how do we differentiate in $250 versus $500? And is there a formula we're utilizing, and how are we quantifying neighborhood revitalization? And does urban gardens and food deserts qualify as neighborhood revitalization?
Director Richardson, I'll let the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Programs come up, Director Turner. But the land bank set rules regarding purchases of properties and side lots are one that we consider for development, and we have a different cost associated with that.
Yeah, to Mayor, Board, and Directors, Director Richardson, the offers that were made on the property, the land bank accepted the best offer that was made on those properties. So we may have some $250, some $500, some $1,000. The city tries to recoup the amount that they get invested in the property, but we accept the best offer. And then in regards to neighborhood revitalization, that can include the construction of homes. It could be an urban garden per se. It could be acquisition, rehab, anything that will enhance the neighborhood as far as redevelopment.
So do we use the same amount for our partners for home development with Habitat for Humanity, University District Partnership, or BCD? Are they, do we use the same formula with them?
What we use with them, the funding that we've provided to those organizations are through our HUD dollars, the Home Investment Partnerships Program. So we provided them funding for construction financing, which is different than this.
So they don't have to purchase those lots? They do not have to purchase those lots?
In the past, we've included that as part of assisting them redevelop, is making land bank properties available to nonprofits.
Let me make sure
But they're not required to.
Okay,
no.
let me hear this again. Urban gardens do qualify as neighborhood
Yes.
revitalization?
Yes, we've had people propose that.
So are there any incentives or any ways we can encourage that kind of redevelopment, particularly in these places where we have a lot of food desert in the inner city? So are there any things we utilize and try to create incentives to invite people, to encourage people to purchase those lots to do just that?
Well, one of the things is when they approach our Land Bank Commission, they have accepted offers that are highly discounted. So that's one incentive, is getting property at a reduced rate. And we have had some gardeners that approached us about properties, just hadn't worked out in all instances.
So do they have to be a nonprofit or LLC to qualify?
No.
So individuals can qualify?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Director Hendricks.
Thank you. I was going to ask Mr. Moore, in the future, would you let us know when houses are coming up?
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 12?
A resolution to ratify the entry into contracts to provide PIT funds for summer academic enrichment and recreation programs for 2019 is endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families, and for the purposes.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Okay. All right. Now we'll, Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 13?
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Revised Code, Section 36-203G of 1988 to extend the sunset provision for an additional 5 years to July 19th, 2024 for portable classroom buildings utilized by the Little Rock School District and for the purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Second reading.
I'm not hearing any seconds. But, okay. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Revised Code, Section 36-203G to extend the sunset provision for an additional 5 years to July 19th, 2024 for portable classroom buildings utilized by the Little Rock School District. 2nd reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Revised Code, Section 36-203G, to extend the sunset provision for an additional 5 years to July 19th, 2024, for portable classroom buildings utilized by the Little Rock School District. Third and final reading.
Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you read item number 14 for the first time?
An ordinance to establish a citizen review board for certain matters in the Little Rock Police Department to declare an emergency and for other purposes. First reading.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. We got a question from Director Peck.
There is no motion to adopt. This is an ordinance, so it would take a motion to go to second reading.
There's a motion and a second for a second reading. All those, but Director Peck.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I would like to table Ordinance 14 until August 20th to give us 30 days so that we can have an opportunity to review all of the information that Mr. Carpenter has prepared for us. We received it about an hour ago, and we haven't had an opportunity to do that.
Is there, we have a motion and a second first. All those in favor, please say aye.
Motion to table takes precedence if there's a second for it. It would go before the motion to go to the second reading.
So the first motion was from Director Richardson.
Right, but the motion to table would take precedence if there was a second.
Right, I haven't heard. Don't we deal with the first
No,
motion?
not on the
because the
motion,
president.
not
so,
on a motion to table. It takes precedence.
Right.
No second.
There's no second. Carry on. Motion to approve Director Richardson's. Well, we already have a motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Yeah.
Ayes have it. Move third reading.
Second reading. Okay. An ordinance to establish a citizen review board for certain matters in the Little Rock Police Department to declare an emergency. Second reading.
Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Now we have gotten to the we've had two readings now. What we will do is allow time for individuals who have signed up to speak and move from that forward. We'll now have Sergeant Rodney Lewis.
I think you only read it twice.
Mayor, you haven't voted on the motion.
Right, we're letting the agenda cards.
Okay.
Yeah, we're letting the agenda items speak first before we vote on them. Yeah.
We haven't read it.
Third reading.
Yeah, they did vote.
Yeah.
An ordinance to establish a citizens review board for certain matters in the Little Rock Police Department to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Now we've had three readings before we go for a vote. We'll now spend this time to allow those who come to speak for and against item number 14. We have Sergeant Rodney Lewis. And again, Sergeant Rodney Lewis, thank you so much for your service to our city and our state.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the Board of Directors. A point of order here. We've talked with the FOP president, and I think we've got there's a representative for the FOP that's going to come forward and speak to you about the things that we've already collaborated on. And I'd like to take a step back and let him come forward and say his, and then I'll come back and approach.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chad Cummings.
It's not usually loud.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, and Mayor Scott, thank you for letting me come and speak to you. My name is Chad Cumming, and I have been asked to represent the FOP and the Black Police Officers Association. And specifically, we have concluded that the Citizens Review Board is not an appropriate ordinance to pass, and we urge you to vote it down. The primary reason is because there is not a need for it. right now, the citizen review already occurs. There is an existing form of review, and we think the primary issue is that there's a lack of public education and knowledge about how much civilian review is present. For example, there are 5 existing agencies and investigative bodies that review police action. This would add a 6th. Most of those have existing forms of appeal. They have due process. They have jurisdictional processes. They have areas of concern. These are complicated issues, so complicated that you're receiving 34-page memos in this afternoon, even though because they've taken weeks to research. This would add a 6th body, and as you've been told, it's been intended to be a Type 4 civilian review board under DOJ guidelines. Now, what that was described as is something that reviews the processes and procedures for fairness and thoroughness and adherence. That's what has been described to you. However, when you read the details of this ordinance, that is not what the writing in the ordinance does. This instead reviews an investigation for accuracy, completeness, impartiality, and objectivity, and thoroughness. Under Section 8 of this ordinance, the CRB would be able to reach 3 conclusions. 1, that the investigation is incomplete. 2, that it concurs with the completed investigation, or that the investigation's findings are not supported by the facts. So this is not a review of the processes and procedures. This is an investigative body. This is a determination of facts. Well, that's not what a Type 4 civilian review board does. And when it's making a finding of facts, it's doing so in an incomplete process because, as that memo explains, there are limits in what a civilian review board can do. And so this review board is going through a review of limited access to details and facts, but it's reaching a conclusion about whether or not that determination of facts in the investigation was thorough. That is different. And as it does that, it has no legal standard of review of whether or not that investigation it is reviewing was thorough and complete. When you appeal a decision to a higher court, there is a standard of review that court takes to determine whether or not the lower fact-finding court had reached an appropriate conclusion. This is not present there. There's no guideline there. There's no member of law enforcement that is involved. There are suggestions that there will be training for the CRB members, but there's not even a non-voting member of the law enforcement in this civilian review board. Imagine, if you will, a review board that looks at the actions of the fire department and whether or not they used appropriate steps to address an emergency without an actual member of the fire department giving them expertise and knowledge. Now, this review board does have the ability to bring in forensic witnesses, but that's not the same as a thorough training. We're talking about something that's incredibly complicated. So, you were told this was going to be a review board that looks at the processes, that looks at the procedures, and is an audit of those procedures, but instead you have a fact-finding body. That is a distinction that is very important, and it is something that is you have either been told one thing and you've been given something else, or it's not been properly written. In either case, we urge you that you should not vote for this ordinance. Now, there's also an issue that we have raised about due process rights. If the CRB is reviewing complaint procedures and policies, there are still due process concerns, but here we're talking about an investigative body, a fact-finding procedure. Now, in that situation, the CRB presents a report to the mayor, to the chief of police, and the city manager. That could lead to additional disciplinary action. Anytime an investigative fact-finding body goes to the chief of police, that can lead to further disciplinary action. One example of how this can interfere with the due process procedures, when you are looking at an investigation, at a fact-finding procedure, the subject of an investigation has due process rights, notice and an opportunity to be heard, the right to have representation. these are not there. If you look at the most recent details in that memo, it notes that that this body does not have subpoena power, but it does very specifically state it can note when the police officer refuses to answer CRB questions. That has an implication that has danger for that officer. If you look at the details of this investigation, the CRB has the ability to look at all of the file. Now, right now, there are very specific legal and jurisdictional limits on what internal affairs can ask and what a criminal investigation can ask, and whether or not those two things can cross. That's because of protecting a police officer's due process rights. Now, this ordinance says the CRB can look at internal affairs statements. Then it can report those to the chief of police and the mayor and the city manager. Again, that's a due process concern. Another due process concern is the CRB, Civilian Review Board. It initiates an investigation upon a determination that a police officer should be punished. That officer does not have a delay in whether or not the officer can file an appeal to the Civil Service Commission. That officer still has to file within that Civil Service Commission time period. Now, the CRB ordinance, it specifically says that the Civil Service Commission's appeal is held until the CRB's investigation can be determined. Now, first of all, you have the question: can a Civilian Review Board ordinance change the time frames that are required of the Civil Service Commission? That's a legal question. But even if it is, you've got a scenario where an officer has a determination. There's a disciplinary action waiting. Now this officer has to wait on his Civil Service Commission appeal while the CRB conducts its investigation. That delay in the officer's appeal rights has yet another due process implication. Those are also very significant problems. Now, we see that this latest amendment is addressing some of the structural problems. For example, one of our first concerns was that the directors were not given the power to approve CRB members. That's apparently in the latest revision that is available. However, what our biggest concern is that the board still has limited oversight powers in these actions. And so why not give the board more involvement? Why not only give the board the ability to approve of them? Why shouldn't the board perhaps be naming a member? The big thing about that we're concerned about, beyond the issues I've already raised, is that there's so much of this that is not finished, and the devil is in the lack of details. The problem is that there's so many things that are not spelled out. There are no bylaws. There's no time. There are very limited time limitations. There's no legal written guideline that we've seen so far that determines whether an initial complaint or a request review, which ones get reviewed, which ones don't. That's not been determined yet. There are still concerns about the protection of confidential information. The example of the internal affairs issue that we just raised. That's just one of them. There's limited funding, yet we're supposed to be able to bring in expert witnesses. All of these things are very important details that still need to be worked out. The police officers are not against civilian oversight. They note that they've had civilian oversight already. However, what they think everybody should do is pause. Make sure this is done properly. Maybe make sure that it's written in the way that it is taking the political elements out of a civilian review. Maybe make sure that the initial intent of a civilian review board that looks at policies and procedures, not specific investigations, maybe that would actually be reflected in the details of the ordinance. And for these and for many other reasons, we urge the board to please vote this ordinance down.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you.
Director Richardson? Oh, and maybe, yeah. Yes, sir.
Mr. Cummings, can I get you back up front? Mayor, let's be real brief, 'cause I suspect we're going to spend a lot of time on this tonight, probably more time than we spent on about 3 triple homicides in the last 3 years. Did I hear you correctly to say you're speaking on behalf of FOP and BPOA?
They asked, yes, sir.
You did say you're speaking on behalf of FOP and BPOA.
The BPOA asked me to speak on behalf of.
I just wanted to make sure I heard that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Director Hendrickson.
I wanted to ask you, how many cards do you have that's speaking on that issue?
Actually, we are now moving to the 4 comments. So we had 2 against, and the 2 against were combined. That was Sergeant Lewis and Mr. Chad Cummings were combined because Mr. Cummings represented the FOP.
So none other?
Now we have 4 more, and should be.
I was just asking about a limit because this gentleman really took
Yes.
a lot of time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Some of it was redundant to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Miss Eve Jorgensen.
I may approach, sir.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to follow up on him. And I'm not going to belabor the point here. I think that we all know why we're here, at least on the police side, in reference to this CRB. My name is Rodney Lewis. I am the president of Black Police Officers Association. And we did collaborate with the FOP in reference to coming here tonight. And I think most of the things that he said that we are in line with. Now we do, from the BPOA side, if a need for a citizen review, we would support that if the language was right inside of the ordinance. But as of right now, from what we've read with the first ordinance, we don't agree with a number of things that's involved in the CRB ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Just to name a few, I know that most of the members will be picked by the mayor, and I feel like that we've been involved in a lot of conversation with you, Mayor, and the president of the FOP in reference to a number of things that's come up in the past, and we still like to be involved in those issues with you moving forward. As far as this ordinance, we said we don't agree with it just because of the language that's in there. Now, I would request, sir, that to get this right, to make this work for everybody, for the FOP and the BPOA and all the members of the police department, the chief's office, the whole entire department, we would like to come to the table and sit down with you. A member of the BPOA, a member of the FOP, the chief's office, the city attorney. Because we want to get this right. There's a number of people that can be on this board, and without us knowing or not having any input in who those people are, we like to at least have a Q&A session with them, a vetting process, so that we know that we're getting the right people to sit in on this board. And again, I don't like it, and to me it appears like it's almost circumventing the police department, the chief of police himself, his decision-making role, which means that the CRB can go back and say, hey, y'all didn't do a thorough job in investigation. What I propose is that, Mr. Mayor and the board, that we get in behind our police department. We've got qualified detectives that can work these cases, and to have a single incident to go through, it's going through 5 different investigations, from internal affairs to a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, and then final decisions on the chief.
Yes, sir.
But there are things on here about physical injury, serious physical injury with the use of force, and that's one of the things that the CRB can take a look at. But we propose to you, sir, that most of the time when we get into some type of altercation that's with a citizen, yes, there's going to be some type of an injury, whether it be a scratch or a bruise. That's what we call a minor use of force. But under the terms of this ordinance, that would be reviewable by the board. And we feel that serious physical injury would be something that would take precedence over a physical injury, which could be just a cut on the finger. It could be just any minor injury. And so we're concerned about that.
And Sergeant Lewis, initially you did share that you wanted to yield your time
Yes, sir.
to Mr. Cummings.
Yeah,
But I want out of respect, I wanted to definitely want you to come back up and share. I think
Yes, sir.
some of the same concerns, and just
Yeah.
so you know, as we discussed the Citizens Review Board months ago, you and Officer Morgan, who's the FOP president, we will have an open line of communication. We'll continue to work together with one another. Because I think we all want to make certain that public safety is priority number one for our entire city. I want to make certain that you know, at least from the bottom of my heart, that how much I respect, admire the Little Rock Police Department, what you guys do each and every day to wake up and protect and serve everyone in the city of Little Rock. In times, there'll be times when we have to agree to disagree,
Yes,
and we'll continue to work together and keep that open line of communication. But we'll carry on and go with Miss Eve. But did you have a few more comments?
No. I just thank you for your time and like I said, all we want is a seat at the table so we can
you have
really
one.
iron
Yes, sir.
this thing out where it needs to be.
Yes, sir. Miss Eve.
Good evening, Mayor Scott and City Board. My name is Eve Jorgensen. I am a gun violence prevention advocate and a longtime Little Rock resident. I'm here today to applaud this innovative proposal for a citizen review board for the City of Little Rock. What I think is so powerful is that this isn't a separate investigation. This is much needed quality control to ensure that the investigative process already in place is working as it is meant to. Some people believe that our law enforcement investigations already provide enough accountability, while others believe more transparency is needed. One extra layer of review can only help, while the perceived lack of accountability can be very divisive. My hope is that this review board will help the citizens of Little Rock trust the process more, and that the number of these cases of use of force will lower. By allowing this level of transparency and empowering the community, I am hopeful we may finally see a new level of trust between our community and the police. I urge you to vote yes.
Thank you, Miss Eve. Amy Pritchard.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. My name is Amy Pritchard, and I'm a resident of Stiff Station. I'm a local attorney and a law professor. Through my legal work and volunteer work, I work with some of the city's most underserved and disenfranchised communities, including people experiencing homelessness, people returning from incarceration, domestic violence survivors, immigrants, and families experiencing extreme poverty. I hear a lot about people's perceptions of law enforcement and their beliefs about law enforcement. Many individuals, particularly in some of these communities, have a distrust in law enforcement that may bleed over into an unwillingness to cooperate fully in criminal investigations. While some of this distrust is rooted in historic interactions between law enforcement and communities, it also comes from a lack of involvement with law enforcement processes and a feeling of voicelessness and powerlessness as it relates to public safety. I can understand this feeling regarding law enforcement. As a child, I had frequent experiences with police when they were called to my home for domestic violence incidents. This was back in a time when law enforcement didn't know how to best respond to domestic violence, so many times encounters left my mother and myself feeling more vulnerable and disempowered. My first job out of high school was working with the City of Seattle's domestic violence unit. Through that experience, I got to work with the City of Seattle's domestic violence law enforcement officers in the late 90s when Seattle had a truly community policing model. As I worked with law enforcement officers on mortality review and other quality improvement measures, and went out with officers on ride-alongs, I developed a better understanding of how officers make their decisions. This understanding and engagement helped me alleviate some of this distrust that I had as a child. The Citizens Review Board will do something similar for our community. As I understand it, the board will not be conducting their own investigations, but will be acting as a community check on investigations. Just as it's important that residents see officers as members of the community, community members must feel engaged and included in the city's public safety goals. It's easy for the community to critique law enforcement and for fear and rumors to spread when the community is not informed and is left voiceless in public safety arenas. The Citizen Review Board will provide a greater sense of government transparency and accountability. This will develop a greater sense of trust between citizens and city government and will help further public safety goals. For this, I ask the board to vote in support of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pritchard. Senator Joyce Elliott.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members. Before I start my comments, I want to set a context for you of the district that I represent. And a part of that district is a 72204 zip code. And last time I looked, I represent that zip code where a group of people have more interaction with law enforcement than any other zip code. But I also, if you think about my district, if you were to start at Children's Hospital and just go straight across 630 until you get to Kirby Road by the big Walmart, and then just go straight back to the county line, you've got my district. And if you think about what that district is, you can understand why I might have a real interest in that. And so before I get to what I want to say from my own perspective, I want to respond to some things. We hear that there's not a need for this. I understand that there is a need because of what I see and hear every day. And what I would really like is for the police officers not to think this is some kind of attack on them. It is not. It is really time for the community and the police to come together and not see each other as the enemy. And this is one way of doing that. If we'll work together and not think of it as a zero-sum game, because this community depends on our doing more than we're doing now to work together. And this is one way. And there is something said about we don't know what the rules are. They're not in here. You normally don't have rules in the ordinance that you write. What you do is you put on paper what you want to do, and then you write the rules. There are no bylaws. I've looked this up, and generally what happens is once the board is constituted, then the board writes the bylaws. They're not supposed to be in the ordinance. And funding is an issue. Obviously, we know we don't have a lot of money just lying around. There's something right now from 150 to 200 boards across cities that have these boards. And I noticed that the cost for some of them range all the way from $20,000 to over $1 million, San Francisco being the highest. And if we think about this only as a political endeavor, we're going to miss the point of this being community building. We cannot see it that way. And lastly, what I heard was that the mayor is going to appoint all of the members. And in my research that I did, where I went to the United States Department of Justice to take a look to see what their guidelines are, and I looked at many of these cities, the mayor does appoint these people. It goes all kind of ways, but that's not anything unusual. And just to give you a quick summary of what's in that citizen review of police from the United States Department of Justice from the National Justice Institute, here are their findings. I can't give you the whole thing. They looked at what would be good from the individual's perspective, and this is what people said. The people felt validated that they were a part of the process, and they could have their voices heard, and they could have more believability in what goes on, or credibility from both sides. They were satisfied at being able to express their opinions and express them in person, whether they won or did not win. It was still a social capital building process. and they feel they were contributing to holding the department accountable, but at the same time, they were held accountable themselves, because you can't just come up and just say something and think it's going to be, somebody's going to say, well, you're right just because you said it. And then they looked at it from the police and the sheriff's perspective. One, improve their relationship and image with the community. And it has strengthened the quality of the department's internal investigations of alleged officer misconduct and reassured the public that the process is thorough and fair. That accrues to a positive thing for everybody. And lastly, has made valuable policy and procedure recommendations, because sometimes when you're so close, you don't see. And Mr. Mayor, I'm wrapping up, because the third perspective, the third perspective was to come from the local elected folks. We're talking about you now. What's the advantage for you guys? It enables you to demonstrate your concern to eliminate police conduct and engage the community. That's a good social capital building process. And it reduces, in some cases, not all, the number of civil lawsuits or successful lawsuits against the cities or the counties. And I want to end with saying nobody's pretending this is a perfect process, but nor are the processes that we have right now. If we think we have too many, before you forego this one, something that 150 to 200 cities around the country are already using, maybe something we have not right now is not working. We don't have to have 6 or 7. We don't have to throw this one out because we have others. We can decide which of those others maybe do we not need to have. I thank you so much for hearing me, and I urge you to please vote yes.
Thank you so much, Senator Elliott. Judge Ollie Neal, retired Judge Ollie Neal.
Mr. Mayor, city directors, I'm going to be very brief because Senator Elliott and Professor Pritchard have really covered the points I need, but I need to tell you just a couple of things about my perspective and what I arrived at during the course of developing that perspective, that is, the experiences I had. I retired as a judge on the Arkansas Court of Appeals. Prior to that time, I served as a circuit judge for the First Judicial Circuit. And prior to that time, significantly, I served as the prosecuting attorney for the First Judicial Circuit. Now, the prosecuting attorney is involved, as Mr. Carpenter can assure you, in much of the decision-making as to how the police prosecutions proceed. Got a little influence on that, a little determination. And so many of my sheriffs, I had 6 county sheriffs, and I believe there were 7 Class A city mayors with police chiefs. And at least one of my sheriffs just determined that he wasn't going to work with me because I represented the folk that were all the troublemakers. That is, these same folk that Joyce and Miss Pritchard would never mention, but these folk that look like this and sometimes want to act up. Now, that sheriff and I we never became warm friends, but our communication was not exactly the kind that would be appropriate for this city. We were in the country in Forest City, and that's a different place. But by the time I left the prosecutor's office, I assure you not one of those 6 sheriffs, nor one of those 7 police chiefs will tell you that that process was anything other than fair, and also that many of those citizens who hated the sheriff, who hated the chief of police, who hated the police said, well, if you work with them a little bit, they'll give you, it works out sometimes. So what I want to say to you simply is that I don't want to give you all the legal support for how you do this, but the fact of the matter is that if you adopt a position that allows there to be a greater transparency, a greater understanding as to what is going on between the time that something happens and final decisions are made, people are much more receptive when they understand it. Now, the prosecutor is not in a position to announce, here's what I thought about as I decided whether to charge this individual. I consider this, and he doesn't do that. He says, we find that the conduct is within the bounds of law and we will not charge. That's not a quote, but that's basically what he says. And yet, my wife was a fairly intelligent woman, had a chance to serve as superintendent of schools on one occasion, would say, I don't know why he said that. And the fact of the matter is that what I know would be speculation based on the fact that I have served as a prosecuting attorney. But why do we expect that all of our people then would understand why that decision could be made? That's what this Citizens Review Board will do. It will make certain that there's an understanding of how we arrive at this. Now, on the other hand, it's a little uncomfortable for somebody to be looking at you. An officer's uncomfortable. I mean, my sheriff in St. Francis County is quite uncomfortable having me telling him what he could prosecute and could not, because I didn't look like the folk he had dealt with. So, I urge you to bring Little Rock into at least the greater potential for that large segment of this population here joining in and believing in this police department is here to protect and serve and not as its enemy. I would support this ordinance.
Thank you, Judge. This is our last card to speak for Judge Wendell Griffin. He's not here. That being said, before we go to the third reading, are there any questions from the, before we go to the vote? We have already had 3 readings. So before we go to a vote, are there any questions? Director Hendricks.
I've been sitting here for 12 years, 13, and if it's ever a time that I've seen race rise to its highest level, it's now. I want to ask that gentleman, he doesn't need to come to the mic. He talked as if, was he a lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, all lawyers don't know everything, okay? They can speak what they want to speak. But I'm really surprised that we even have a motion on the floor to defer this, as it has been said by the judge, and I think that he spoke eloquently about the issue and about us as board members.
And Director Hendricks, just so you know, the motion on the floor is right now we're ready to vote, so there's no delay. Once we go for a vote, it'll be decided. So, yes, ma'am.
I wish. Who called that vote? I got something for him. Who did that?
We're ready to vote. We'll go to Director Webb. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of quick questions and then a comment. I wanted to ask both about the bylaws and the training, and I don't know if it would be Tom or you or somebody who might elaborate on what that might look like.
Yes. Before again, and I'll speak with the training and the appointments and things of that nature. Again, everything that this board has seen in regards to the ordinance that you saw 7 days ago remains the same. Anything that's been added to, as you all have copies right now, anything that has been added have been suggestions that's come from this body and that we accepted and made those clarifications as we move forward. As it relates to the board, with any board and commission within the City of Little Rock governing structure, the mayor makes appointments to those boards and commissions, and the city board ratifies. And so this board would ratify those appointments moving forward. If this ordinance is passed, when we make those appointments, we will make certain that those appointees will receive training on policies and procedures from the Little Rock Police Department. Chief Keith Humphrey will lead that effort in making certain that there's great training before they begin to start their body. And as with Civil Service Commission and anything else, there are bylaws that are adopted by the board in conjunction, and the city attorney works to make certain that any bylaws that are adopted, that they're legal within the confines of the City of Little Rock. So hopefully that answers your question.
It did. Thank you. And if I could just make a comment.
And again, before that, which mean that anything would have to be legal, ethical, and constitutional. And this particular ordinance is legal, ethical, and constitutional. Now, that doesn't mean we all agree on it, but it's legal, it's ethical, and it's constitutional.
Thank you. I think Senator Elliott and I read some of the same articles, and then a few that were also different. I mean, I read one article that said they didn't like the civilian review boards because they were too biased against the police, and then I read another one that said they didn't like them because they were filled with people from the unions. And frankly, I have faith in the mayor, and I have faith in the city board. And I have faith that with the appointments, that you will vet appointees, and that we will vet those appointees. We've spent a lot of time talking about 21st century policing. I mean, we've talked about that whenever an issue, a residency issue or community-oriented police or things like that have come up in the last few years. And when we refer to documents that from the National League of Cities, which provides us with outstanding material on many different topics, in their handbook on 21st century policing, one of the things that Senator Elliott alluded to, in which it states very clearly in that document, is the role that we play as elected officials, as city officials, is fostering trust and promoting transparency. And this ordinance gives us an opportunity to do that, to build bridges, to build trust. I'm confident that the training will be good. I am confident that the appointments will be solid. I think the community engagement and the trust that we can build through this is important. I support the police. I support the community. And I don't think 150 to 200 other cities would have passed this and keep passing this if it were something that didn't work. So I'm going to vote for this ordinance tonight.
Thank you so much, Director Webb, and I definitely agree with you. And also, if this ordinance is passed, I want to make a strong commitment and to give my word that before anything goes into action, there will be education of everything, so everyone is aware as we move forward. So I do appreciate your support. Director Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A couple of quick points. I don't think we're looking at this as a panacea. I don't think that we're saying this to be all and cure all. I think this is a segue for us to develop a more community engaged process. Here's what I find interesting, really, really interesting. The places where we need the heaviest police presence happen to be the places where we have the worst community police relationships. When we had an uptick in crime and homicides a couple of years ago, the reason why we could not solve them, according to our police department, was we had poor community relationships. We couldn't have any involvement with the community. They wouldn't talk to us. I think Dr. Pritchard, Senator Elliott, I think Judge Neal, they all alluded to that. And that's one of the ways we bridge the gap between community and police. Some places in our city of Little Rock, unfortunately, we protect and serve. Other places we patrol and control. And I'll give you one quick example. The day after 18-year-old Justin Bell was murdered on 11th and Lewis, the following morning I rode to that area. And I saw a couple of police officers engaging some residents, riding bikes. They stopped and they're engaging them. And one of them practically told one of the constituents that she could not be in Little Rock because she was on parole and she lived in North Little Rock. And when she questioned that, he immediately got into this confrontative kind of conversation, which I was thinking, well, and I asked one of the police officers when they got there, do y'all know what happened? No, we just found out this morning. They probably know more than we know. Well, that didn't lend itself to her willing to cooperate with them because of the way she was engaged and the way that they dealt with her. So I decided to give them a ride to where they were going, which was 16th and Payton. And one officer said, don't take them to your house. What? I've done gang intervention prevention work in that area for a number of years. And what I found interesting was one of the officers told me, when I asked him that morning, do y'all know anything that's going on? Well, I just found out this morning. They probably know more than we do. The day that he had a confrontational conversation with, when she just questioned his comment about she didn't have the right to be in Little Rock because he was on parole from North Little Rock. That's what he essentially told her. I sat and listened and I heard that. And I agree that we need to figure out a way to improve community police relationships. And the places where we have the worst community police relationships are the places where we need the heaviest police presence, the heaviest police involvement. And I think Senator Elliott made reference to 72204 and some of the criminal activity in that area, some of the other areas we're talking about in our city. We need to take that in consideration. This is not the panacea. It's not a panacea. But it could be a segue for us improving the process that we have in place. And we need to think about that, and don't think that this is an attack on the police. Since I've been on this board, there's been no department in the city of Little Rock that's had more support from this board than the police department. That's the cognitive dissonance when I hear people say, well, it's an attack on the police. It's happened to hurting the police morale. There's been no department, no entity since I've been on this board that's enjoyed more support, unquestioned support for the police department than this city board of directors. Man, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Director Richardson. Director Adcock.
Yes. As we sat down in here this afternoon, we received the answers to our questions that we were asked last week, last Tuesday here, and we have just now received the answers. Some of you have called me and asked me questions. I couldn't give you the answers because I hadn't received them. I will not be supporting this because I do not think that this board has had an opportunity to look at this. Our questions have not been answered until we walked in here. This is 34 pages, and I'm sorry, I've listened to you speak. I have not sat here and wrote or listened to or read 34 pages. So I will not be supporting this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Adcock. Director Hendricks.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to comment on Senator Elliott and the other young ladies that's on the front row with her. I do appreciate you being here and speaking out. The reference that Director Adcock mentioned a moment ago, it's a reply from the city attorney that it's nothing wrong. Maybe I shouldn't use the word wrong, but we had a right to do what we're doing in presenting this bill. It's nothing legal that would keep us, that would make this illegal, what we are doing. And I think that everybody up here ought to give this a chance. And I still say, God bless this board if they turn this down. And I will pray for them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hendricks. Director Compuris.
Thank you, Mayor. I think in principle what you're talking about is great. And I think that if we took the time to really look at it and properly think about it and have the input of all the citizens, we could come to something we're all happy with. I don't think in my time on this board that I've had the entire police department that have said, slow down, that have said, let us have time to participate, that we want to have something that help us police, but we don't feel like we're included. And I think that speaks volumes to what we're doing. I would be very supportive of trying to work through this process and find something that everybody can support. And I'm very much like Joan. I'm going to have to vote against this tonight, mainly because I think that it's not exactly where we need to be. There's an old saying about measure twice and cut once. And I don't think we are doing that with this ordinance. And as I said, I will be very supportive of trying to work through it. I will be very supportive to do whatever I can to make it where everybody's included. But doing it this way, this quickly, without all the facts, I can't do it.
Well, thank you so much, Director Compuris. Director Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been a really, really difficult decision and that I've given lots and lots of thought to. I want to thank the people that came here to talk on both sides and the number of people that have reached out to me about this. I think there's a lot of confusion about exactly what will the Citizens Review Board look like. And I don't think it's necessarily so much a resistance to the notion, to the idea, but just a lack of education, a lack of understanding. And I want to especially give a thanks to my colleague and friend Kathy Webb because she summarized a lot of my feelings quite eloquently. And I'm just going to have to trust, and I'm going to surprise a lot of y'all because I said I'm going to vote no, yes, but I will be supporting it.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. We're going to, Director Hinch, we'll get to the judge. Director Fortson.
A lot of my thoughts have already been expressed by others, but I do have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Mayor. There have been 2 or 3 references made to changes in the ordinance. We had an ordinance distributed last Tuesday, which was placed on the agenda for tonight. And I guess my inquiry is, are we voting on the language that was distributed last Tuesday, or have the changes that have been alluded to in some of the conversation been brought out there? And if so, has the ordinance been amended to reflect them?
Yes, it's all online, all the changes that's been passed out to you. We've already conferred with our city attorney. That's all perfectly legal. What you have before you is actually online right now as well. And I just a bit of a caution. Yes, that's just the answer. Your question is yes. We're within parliamentary procedure. Director Richardson, did you have another? Or did I? Director Richardson.
Mayor, if none of my other colleagues want to speak on this, I move to approve.
There's a motion and second to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Roll call.
Director Hendricks.
Voting to pass it, to approve it. You want to hear the judge before the vote? We can't do that, Director. We gotta vote, Director Hendricks. But
Director Hendricks.
you can vote yes for it. She says yes.
Director Richardson.
Yes.
Director Webb.
Yes.
Director Peck.
Yes.
Director Hines.
No.
Director Wright.
Yes.
Director Campuris.
No.
Director Fortson.
No.
Director Adcock.
No.
Vice Mayor Wyrick. It's 5-5.
Yes from the mayor. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move to item number 15, first reading.
An ordinance to authorize the creation of entertainment districts within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to establish standards for the creation of permanent or temporary entertainment districts, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes, first reading.
Move to suspend the rule, put on second reading.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to authorize the creation of entertainment districts within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to establish standards for the creation of permanent or temporary entertainment districts, to declare an emergency, second reading.
Move to suspend the rule, put on third and final reading.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third and final reading.
An ordinance to authorize the creation of entertainment districts within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to establish standards for the creation of permanent or temporary entertainment districts, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
Questions from Director Wright? No question from Director Wright. Question from Director Hines?
Mayor, I have a point of order. Did we cover the emergency clause on 14?
I was just about to ask for that. We did not.
Oh, we did not. Motion to pass. We're going, so everyone's aware. So Director Hendricks, we're going back. There was an emergency clause for the Citizens Review Board. So record your same vote again for the Citizen Review Board for the emergency clause. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it.
Roll call, Mayor.
Roll call again.
Director Hendricks.
Yes.
Director Richardson. Director Webb. Director Peck. Director Hines.
No.
Director Wright.
Yes.
Director Campuris. Director Fortson.
No.
Director Adcock. Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Yes from the mayor.
Fails.
Emergency clause failed. You can't vote on that.
So if we pass the ordinance, there's no emergency clause, so it goes into action at what point in time?
The ordinance becomes effective 30 days from the date of passage. The time for referendum is 30 days after that.
So 30 days. Thank you so much. And that brings just now that's a really good point. Since we do not have an emergency clause, part of that, we have 30 days to educate the public, which speaks to a lot of what Director Cappy Peck shared, and we'll, in the next 30 days, make sure that happens, and so it goes into effect. Thank you. Third and final reading for item 15. Oh, did you already have the third reading? Can't remember. We did have a third reading. All those in favor of item 15, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, Ayes have it. Roll call for item number 15. Item 15, everyone, is the Entertainment District Ordinance.
What are we?
This,
We're going on.
there's a roll call, because it's already had third reading. This roll call is to approve item number 15. Madam Clerk?
Director Hendricks.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Richardson. No. Director Webb. Yes. Director Peck. Yes. Director Hines.
Yes.
Director Wright.
Yes.
Director Compuris. Director Fortson. Aye. Director Adcock. No. Vice Mayor Wyrick. No. Director Hendricks, would you like to change your vote?
It passes. It passes. Item number 16.
Emergency clause. on
I
that,
need an
Mayor.
emergency clause for 15.
All right. All those in favor of the emergency clause, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Comments, Mayor.
Roll call, please.
For the emergency clause?
Yes.
Okay. Director Hendricks?
Emergency clause on the entertainment district.
Director Richardson?
Yes.
Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Peck? Yes. Director Hines?
Yes.
Director Wright?
Yes.
Director Compuris?
Yes.
Director Fortson?
Yes.
Director Adcock?
No.
Vice Mayor Wyrick? No. 7-3.
We only had 4. Let me see. 1 second. Sorry. All the comments that I have are for these.
There were, I believe, there were.
Yeah, just fine. We had the 2 comments for, and Mr. Holmstrom and Mr. Bryant yielded their time for that. And I just found the one against, and before it goes in order, Ms. Teresa Ballou. We can't. Well, that's my apologies. I did not see this third card, and that is my.
I feel like I had quite a bit of influential things to share with the board.
Well, I definitely want to, if Mr. Parliamentarian, if we can allow Ms. Ballou to speak.
I've changed lots of people's minds before in a short period of time.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, no, you cannot go back to the vote.
Okay, I can't go back. This is my fault.
There can be a motion to reconsider the vote and then set it totally aside and then do it, but you can't go back.
Right, but I will.
I think that would be the fair thing to do.
There has to have a motion to do that. There's a motion and a second to reconsider.
Director Adcock voted against it, so she can't move to reconsider. It would have to be somebody who voted in favor.
Director Webb is motion to reconsider the vote.
Has to be a second, and it's a. No, I think
And Ms. Ballou, I do want to apologize. I'm the reason why that happened. I was looking at the two cars, and this one was stuck under it. And when I saw Mr. Holstrom said that he and Mr. Bryant wanted to yield their time because of the time of the meeting, I said yes. That's why I went forward. But it was an oversight on my end, and I do apologize.
I accept your apology and explanation at the same time. I would really like to address this issue.
Yeah, and all we need now is a second from Director Webb, but it has to be unanimous, I believe. What's the parliamentary procedure?
that's what I don't remember because it's being made at the same meeting. I think it's a simple majority vote. But I point out that while this allows for the creation of these districts, there's still an ordinance on the agenda for the creation of an individual district in the river market. And
so what we'll do is we'll let Ms. Ballou speak on on item number 16 if item number 15 passes. So you'll still have opportunity to.
Well, but actually, if item number 15 is not addressed, then it's kind of a moot point with item number 16.
Well, item 15 allows for this city to have a particular district because there's a state law now, but you have to do this. So that gives us clearance for to do it. But to actually have a particular district, you have to have item number 16.
But it allows for temporary entertainment districts.
You still have to have a vote because that would have to be done by resolution.
You still have to have a vote. So you'll have an opportunity on the item. If this item 15 passes, you'll have opportunity on item number 16. And again, I do apologize. I'm the reason why that happened. Well, we got to carry on with our order, but I just want to make sure you know I do apologize for that.
I accept that apology next
Thank you. So is there a second to Director Webb's?
What are we doing?
To reconsider. There was a motion to reconsider. There's no second. There's a second. You voted against it, so yeah. So I have to have a second.
Point of order, please. Could we have one person communicate with us at a time? I've got a lot of crosstalk going up here. I'm having trouble. We've got the mayor and Tom, and I can't hear either one of them.
The motion to reconsider has to be made by someone who voted in the succeeding side. In this case, that would be a yes. The second to the motion to reconsider can be made by anyone. Second. What I'm not sure of is what the vote is. I think it's a simple majority since it's right at the same time as the meeting, but I've got to look that one up. And can you give me 10 minutes?
Motion to recess for 10 minutes.
There's a motion and second to recess. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. Roll call. Director Hines has requested a recess. There was a motion and a second. For 10 minutes, so it'll allow for the city attorney to figure out the parliamentary procedure to reconsider a vote. That's the reason. But just give. Yes, ma'am. No, yes, ma'am. All right. Now, we had a motion and a second to reconsider to go to recess. Nays had it. There was a roll call. And so now, Director Peck, now we'll start with the, Madam Clerk, will you go figure out for the recess?
Director Hendricks.
For the recess, Director. Yes, she said yes.
Director Richardson. No. Director Webb. Yes. Director Peck. Yes. Director Hines.
Yes.
Director Wright.
No.
Director Compuris. Yes. Director Fortson. Yes. Director Adcock. Yes. Vice Mayor Wyrick. No. 7-3.
Recess for 10 minutes. Well, everyone hold on. Well, point of order from the chairman. Our city attorney now has the answer. So if he has the answers, we'll go back in the session.
I'll withdraw my motion.
There's a motion to withdraw. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. City attorney.
Majority vote to reconsider.
Majority vote to reconsider. So all those in favor of a reconsider, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. So now, has to be a motion for, now since it's been reconsidered, Ms. Ballou, you can come up.
No, majority is.
Thank you all for the opportunity to address this important issue. My name is Teresa Ballou. I have previously served as the Executive Director of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the Chairman of Injury and Violence Prevention, the Section Chief for the State of Arkansas. I currently chair the Arkansas Impaired Driving Prevention Task Force. I'm on the Arkansas Alcohol and Drug Abuse Coordinating Council, the Pulaski County Jail Citizens Advisory Council, and the Board of Directors for Speak Up About Drugs, which is a new nonprofit that's addressing substance abuse, including alcohol, with a focus on opioid addiction, youth intervention, and advocacy, among other things that I've been involved in. I'm also a graduate of the Johns Hopkins Institute for Injury and Violence Prevention. When this issue has come up before, I've referred to it as the so-called entertainment district because there's really not anything funny about deciding to allow an area of our city to enter into this kind of an agreement with private businesses and to bring it into our communities. I wanted to, and I have this, most of the report, the statistics of it for you if you'd like. I'd like to refer you to an article policing entertainment districts, and the report is a big survey that was done of police managers in 30 cities where entertainment districts exist, and it has some very good numbers for us to consider before a decision is made about bringing an entertainment district into the city of Little Rock. Now, there were 29 questions that were asked, and they addressed issues such as the entertainment district features, the entertainment district dynamics, and how violations and law enforcement all work together. Out of those, most of those, over half, were scored as either being always a problem and frequently a problem. That included the issues of access to public restrooms, nightclubs and bars, inadequate lighting, inadequate street capacity, and inadequate parking capacity, the concentration of alcoholic beverage outlets, noise, cruising, public urination, transients and panhandlers, traffic congestion and gridlock, crowds released from bars and nightclubs at closing time, public fighting, auto burglaries, public intoxication, noise ordinances, as well as other drugs. A gentleman wrote an article about the Minneapolis area entertainment district, and he said this: what they found since their entertainment district went into place was that families with young children would not be attracted to those places because of the late night noise pollution. And he referred to these entertainment districts as adult theme parks. The reason the adult theme park exists is because, according to him, leaders are too focused on bringing people downtown for entertainment or drawing in tourist dollars, and policy should shift from making cities places to visit and concentrate on making them wholesome places to live. There are many successful cities, and according to many of you, Little Rock is on the upturn. The downtown area is growing. There are more people living down there. It's a safe and enjoyable place for all of our residents to enjoy. What these cities need, the successful cities that do not have entertainment district, is space for people. We are disconnecting our downtowns from all other aspects of life when we attempt to turn them into entertainment district. You know, there's good news. Over the years, and working in injury prevention particularly, time is a four-letter word because it's hard to know what you prevent or what changes have happened. Since 1995, and this is from the Arkansas Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 79% of our students drank alcohol in the last 30 days when they were surveyed. That number has gone down to 58%, which is great. The percentage of students who drink before the age of 13 has gone from 37% to 22%. And the percentage of students who drink to get drunk has gone from 51% to 25%. We have worked really hard to address the issue of underage drinking. But this is an important question that was asked. How many students get the alcohol they drink, and where do they get it from? And the answer to that is an adult who's over 21 gives it to them. And the way that entertainment districts work, and when you turn people out into the streets, the monitoring of this is going to be very, very difficult. I want to, I'm sorry, just one moment. I want you to know that we already have problems here in Little Rock because of disparate closing times of bars. When one bar closes, what happens? It's last call, and that becomes one for the road, putting our citizens at risk. When these hours that are proposed in these guidelines say that there's no more public drinking at midnight, well, what's going to happen? People are going to get in those cars, not supervised, and leave and head to other bars where it's open later. I have questions about how Little Rock can provide coverage, Director Richardson, like you were talking about, if this goes through, how do we have the resources and the police officers to provide the coverage that our communities already have? Who is going to pay for that? Many of the cities in this survey that I quoted before fund their coverage for entertainment districts by officer overtime. The other question is, who holds liability when someone has overconsumed and they just leave the downtown streets of Little Rock? I've worked with many victims who have come from bars downtown, one most notably during a festival where people were out for Mardi Gras, and he hit a grandmother and her 3 children head on going the wrong way down the interstate towards Pine Bluff and killed all 3 of them. And fortunately, this was an unfortunate situation, but there was a bar that was able to be specifically identified, and their insurance and liability gave some compensation. Who pays when that happens? How do we monitor over-serving? If you're a server, how are you going to monitor that when people are coming in and out of your bar? What about drunk driving? Because, I care about that. We all do. Right now, the Little Rock Police Department does not have enough staff and officers to work the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration grant. They actually gave back that money because there are not enough officers to work that overtime and to work on that program to provide sobriety checkpoints here in the city of Little Rock. Little Rock downtown is thriving. Other cities are placing a bet that their economic situation is going to improve and tourism is going to improve by passing entertainment districts. But this entertainment district here in Little Rock, both the permanent and the temporary, there is nothing in that that is going to add to the quality of life for those of us who live, work, and play here in this city. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions that you have or not.
Director Adcock, did you have a question? Okay, I'm turning you off. Director Hines, did you have a question? I was taking that off. Thank you so much, Ms. Ballou. We'll now.
Thank you. Thank you for the accommodation for me
Yes,
to
ma'am.
speak. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, and again, I do apologize for the oversight and the mistake. Mr. Holmstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Board. My name is Gabe Holmstrom. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Little Rock Partnership. It's good to be here tonight. This ordinance is a result of a lot of hard work and research, and this wasn't something that was done without a lot of thought and foresight. I'd like to point out that when the discussion of this issue first came before the General Assembly 14 years ago, it was vetoed by the governor. We've then come a long way. Downtowns have changed. Our downtown has changed. And when this came up at the legislature, we worked to get it passed at the legislature, and we were successful in doing so. One of the things you're seeing in downtowns all across the country is an urban renewal, and we've all noticed and clearly seen the benefits that the focus on downtown has had in our own city. One of the cities that we reached out to and talked to is another similarly sized city in the South, Huntsville, Alabama. Both Alabama and Nebraska are states that recently passed similar legislation in recent years. So there were cities in both of those states that we met with. Alabama, or Huntsville, has had this for several years now. We talked to their police force and we talked to their city officials. They did not have a noticeable uptick in crime, and they've already gone back and expanded the hours and days of operation in their district, and they're currently going back to do so again. So they've seen this as favorable. They've seen this as a boon to tourism. In the research and the planning leading up to this, we met with the ABC and worked with them on a lot of the issues that were previously mentioned. So we feel like there are adequate avenues to address all of those issues. And one of the most important things, while this is related to the next ordinance, is while it is important to note, this is, we're getting this out here. There's only going to be one as we start this process. It's going to be in the River Market. There is a police kiosk in the River Market. So a lot of these concerns about safety, we feel like having the police kiosk and having that additional presence in this entertainment area, close to our hotels, close to our convention area and convention district. And that's one of the reasons, or that's an additional reason why we'd like to do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor. We're talking about 15 ordinance number, because 15 allows the establishment of temporary entertainment districts. They don't necessarily have to be downtown, correct?
That's correct.
And those districts have to be within close proximity of a number of hotels, correct?
The temporary do not.
Temporary do not, just the
Yes,
permanent?
that's
So
correct.
the temporary, what guidelines do you utilize to establish the temporary? Because I'm not sure everybody knows that.
Well, I would say that, I think the guidelines are outlined. They're similar to what you'd use for a street closure permit. So a similar process was outlined there. I think one of the distinctions or additions to that is having 5 permitted establishments that have the ability to sell alcohol in those in that vicinity. So you have to have at least 5, whereas I know this is getting ahead of ourselves, but the permanent one has a requirement for 10.
Got you. I just wanted to make sure, because you referenced downtown several times in your comments. I wanted to make sure it was clear that this not necessarily limit us to downtown. These can be created away from downtown, correct?
Absolutely correct, Director Richardson. Yes. So, and if the ordinance passes, yes, different areas of the city will have the ability to set up these temporary districts for up to 5 days.
Thanks, my friend. East Little Rock, West Little Rock, South Little Rock,
All of Little Rock.
Southwest Little Rock, Joan, all over.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Vice Mayor Wyatt.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to be in the River Market Saturday night. Had dinner about 9 o'clock. There was a big event at the Clinton Center. There was not any green space left. Everybody was standing or sitting. It was a big event. Finished dinner about 11:30, and we had to park quite a ways from where we were eating, and there were tons of kids, juveniles, under the drinking age. They were kind of running in packs. There might be 20 to 25. And so when I saw all the kids that were there, I became very concerned about this ordinance and how we were going to deal with the children that are occupying the River Market. So I've talked to some police officers, and they say, yeah, there's kids. I thought maybe it was just because of the Clinton event that there were so many kids there that they'd been to that. But how do you address all the children that are there and their children? How do you address the children and make sure that they are not imbibing with the adults? They look like adults, but you know they're not.
Well, I think there's two things I would say to that, and then certainly these issues came up in the discussions that we had with LRPD leading up to the drafting of the ordinance. The first I would say is that if an establishment that is currently permitted is going to sell a beverage that they're going to be able to take out of the establishment, it's going to be in a branded cup. So if somebody is carrying the branded cup, that's going to help LRPD identify one of those beverages. And the second thing that I would say to that, and again, I want this to come off as very respectful because I mean it that way, is that if people were going to break the law, and if kids, by all means, they're going to break the law, they're doing that already. So I think this is a way, especially with having the branded cup, that's going to really help the LRPD to identify this and make this a positive situation.
Okay. The ordinance talks about 10 or more private properties permitted, and then there's a hotel situation going on, and we talk about contingent properties. So if you have several businesses and then you've got a street, does that still constitute part of the 10, or does that still constitute enough for a permanent district?
For a permanent district, I think it would have to another permanent district would require an additional ordinance. So I think that it would depend on what how they draft that.
Look at the
ordinance.
River Market. You've got businesses, and then you have streets, then you have more businesses.
Correct.
So do you have enough for the River Market to do that?
Yes, ma'am. And the next ordinance, it encompasses the 3-block stretch from Cumberland or La Harpe all the way to I-30. And then it goes from
There's streets in the middle of that. There's side
the
streets.
side streets. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. So on the southern, I don't have it in front of me. On the southern border, it's a certain number of feet from the center line of the middle of President Clinton, and then to the north, it goes through the 2 streets on either side of the River Market pavilions and the River Market building, and encapsulates that entire area.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Warwick, the permanent one is described, and in this case it happened. The temporary ones will go before the Planning Commission to make sure that they've got the requisite meetings there. Also, it's not just an individual that will say, this is the cup that you can drink out of. It's got to be approved as a part of the plan. For the temporary ones, the planning director can require that individuals wear basically wrist bracelets that are colored that will identify them as people that can be drinking alcohol. You cannot refill a cup. The cup is given to you and it's not supposed to be refilled. Now, you can go back, I guess, to wherever you purchased it from or someplace else and they can fill it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just, refill it as the way you go.
Kids are crafty. They can take one of those colored cups and pour it into their McDonald's cup and, move on down the road. There was just a ton of kids there. I was really surprised at the number of juveniles that were running up and down the streets. Of course, curfew, I believe, is 12. And so this was about 11:30.
On Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, on Saturday. So they should be scooting on down the road and home before too long after that. But there was just a lot of children. And I'm saying children because they were under.
Significantly.
Yeah. Now, they looked adult, but you could tell by the way they were acting that they were just kids. So.
Well, and I would go back and when we talked to some of these other cities, we asked about some of these issues, and they said, are you going to have people that push the limits or try to do some of these things that we're alluding to? Yes, you are. But by and large, everybody appreciated the ability to do this and played by the rules.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Director Adcock.
Do you not think that young people are going to pick up these cups that people throw down and start carrying them around and filling them up with Sprite or something just to tease the police officers? I've got the cup, and I can see, I would hate to be a police officer down there. These are the same young people that took over Park Plaza and just about ruined that shopping area. And now they're down at the River Market area. And so I think that, we need to understand that we are going to have to put a lot more police officers down there. A lot more parents will have to be called because these kids are going to pour Sprite in it and try to tell the police officer it's something else.
I have no doubt that there are going to be some kids that are going to be kids. But I think when we talk to the police officers about this issue, we were very open and upfront with them and said, hey, we want the feedback from this. We have to have a starting point. We can continue to beat this up and change it and try to make perfect the enemy of the good, but we have to have a starting point. There's always a way to come back. We're going to continue to meet with them throughout this process and find a way to tweak this if we need to prove it or if we need to get rid of it.
I think another mistake was during farmers market time because I think families would not go down there during farmers market time. I think we're going to see a real loss to the farmers in our area.
Well, so the reasoning behind that is there was an interest and a desire from other folks and restaurants who have a brunch option in the River Market area, and then said people may want to have a mimosa, may want to have a Bloody Mary and walk around and go to the farmer's market. And again, we saw these similar concepts that worked well in other cities, and that's why it was.
Well, here again, we're trying to please a few people and not ask the whole group of people in our city. And I would like for things like this to go out where all people are asked, what do you think about it and everything before we lose business down there from families. Thank you.
We've now had responses from Director Adcock and Director Warwick. All those in favor of item number 15, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it.
Votes count, please.
Roll call?
Roll call.
No. Roll call.
Director Hendricks? Director Richardson? Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Peck?
Yes.
Director Hines? Director Wright? Director Compuris? Director Fordson?
Yes.
Director Adcock?
No.
Vice Mayor Wyrick? Director Hendricks, would you like to change your vote? Okay. 6 to 3 to 1.
Motion passes. There's a motion for emergency clause. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it.
Roll call vote.
Emergency clause vote.
Director Hendricks? Director Richardson?
No.
Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Peck?
Yes.
Director Hines? Director Wright? Director Compuris? Director Fordson? Director Adcock?
No.
Vice Mayor Wright? Vice Mayor Wyrick?
No.
Director Hendricks, would you like to change your vote? 6 to 3 to 1.
It fails, and as we know that since the emergency clause failed, it'll go into action in 30 days. All right. Madam Clerk, would you please read item 16 for the first time?
Mayor, before she reads that, because 15's emergency clause failed, 16 can't have an emergency clause.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, first reading.
An ordinance to create the permanent River Market Entertainment District pursuant to the Entertainment District Ordinance and for the purposes.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. Second reading.
Hold on just a sec. An ordinance to create the permanent River Market Entertainment District pursuant to the Entertainment District Ordinance. Second reading.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. We'll now go into citizens'
Roll
community.
call vote, please.
Third reading, sorry.
We have a request for a roll call
On the second reading.
on the vote for the
Yeah.
second
Oh, I'm
reading.
sorry, I thought it was third reading.
Okay.
I'll wait.
We'll wait. Third reading.
Okay. An ordinance to create the permanent River Market Entertainment District pursuant to the Emergency District Ordinance. Third and final reading. Entertainment District. What did I say? Oh, Entertainment District. I'm sorry.
Seeing no other questions, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call.
Director Hendricks. Director Richardson.
No.
Director Webb.
Yes.
Director Peck.
Yes.
Director Hines.
Yes.
Director Wright.
Yes.
Director Compuris. Director Fordson.
Yes.
Director Adcock.
No.
Vice Mayor White.
No.
7 to 4.
6
6-4.
6 to 4. I'm sorry. It's late. Oh, it's not late.
We'll now move into citizens' communication. Mr. Ronnie Jackson.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Directors. My name is Ronnie Jackson, and I'm standing before you tonight to just invite you all to get involved with us in our NUSA meetings. We have our our third quarterly NUSA meeting this coming Saturday. It'll be at the Willie Hinton Center at 8 o'clock in the morning for a continental breakfast, and then at 8:30 we'll be having our meeting. And we're out of there by 10 o'clock. We have some excellent speakers, and we would invite the public to come out and be with us. But I also stood here to inquire about each of our directors as we get ready to plan for NUSA 2020. We're looking forward to you all working with us to plan that. I'm co-chairing neighborhood pride tours. And when we were out in Palm Springs, California in May, I sat at the table with some individuals, and they want to see our neighborhoods when they come to Little Rock. And so I want to partner with you as directors and make sure that you all give me some information of who I need to talk to in your area so that we can get neighborhood tours together for all of those persons that are coming from all across the United States. I have Ms. Brenda Tenner here with me. Ms. Sherry Enoch is in the back, and we've been working towards this, and we're starting to work each week meeting to get this together for our city, Little Rock, Arkansas, one of the greatest cities in America. So I thank you, Director Wright, because she always goes with us on those NUSA conferences and bring back information. Vice Mayor Wyrick, always good to see you. She's always involved with us, and I want to get all of our directors involved with us as we plan for our neighborhood pride tours. It's going to be really important that we bring and showcase Little Rock, Arkansas. I thank you for your time. And I'll be emailing you all an information sheet so that you all can provide me with areas that you want to have toured in your neighborhoods that you're with. And maybe you can provide me also with contact persons that you would like for me to get with, to work with, because we're building our team now to get this going. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Director Adcock, I want to just say this. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. She's our fearless leader, and when we first talked about putting this on, I think she came to you, City Manager Moore, and came back and said, yes, we can go for it, because I just saw the email that says, would you like to host it? And so being a hotelier in the city of Little Rock, I know how hotels like to have conventions, and that's a great time to have it. If we have River Market or River Fest this year or that year, next year, it would be great. But other things that are going on in our city. So, Mayor, we thank you. We thank you for the pitch that you made in video to help us, and that was great. And so we thank each of you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sutar, Nama, if you would please come. Let's give him a round of applause. You got a chance to see the board in action, as Director Wright would say, definitely from a civic standpoint. And thank you so much for weathering the night with us. Very grateful for you, and we'd love to hear from you right now.
I don't know what to say.
What school do you go to?
Oh, I go to Pinnacle View Middle School.
Awesome. Little Rock School District. All right.
And I'm in Troop 24 at Asbury Church. And yeah.
Well, we're grateful that you're here and taking the time to be with us and speaking publicly. That's a great accomplishment, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Mayor, for the board's benefit, Troop 24 and the troop at the deaf school are in a bitter battle as to which one is the oldest continuous troop in the Boy Scouts of America west of the Mississippi.
Would you happen to be a member of one of those troops? Oh, you just... Dr. Julius Larry, the third.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I don't like to come before you all too often unless there's a serious problem. So everyone should have a document in front of you or at your desk called Exhibit A. And I'd like for you to take out Exhibit A. It's entitled City of Little Rock, Racial Discrimination Against Black Contractors. So today I'm wearing my black contractor's hat. I own Sun Construction and Ready Mix Concrete, and I can say in 10 years I've never received a contract from the City of Little Rock. And Director Richardson, about 2 years ago, we answered an RFP from the city, and we proposed to just light up all the second ward down there with LED lights and remove those halogen lights and the mercury vapor lamps. Our little black kids are inhaling mercury vapors, and nobody seems to care. I never did hear anything back from any of this, so now I see why. If you will take a look in the very first column where it says grand total, $887,988,396.56 or so of our taxpayers' dollars over the last 12 years have gone to a handful of white male contractors. But what's more importantly, if you go a little to the right, you'll see the percentage. 90% of the city's contracts in the last 12-year period went to white contractors. Well, now let's take a look at minorities. The whistleblower, one that put this document together, because it does not exist as a document in the city's records. It's just a hodgepodge of numbers. So he put this chart together. You see minorities, that A is for blacks, black contractors. In the same 12-year period, the black contractors received $25,510,182.69. But what's most egregious, that represented 2.59% of the city's contracts in a 12-year period. So over the same 12-year period, where one group gets 90% of the city's contracts and $887 million, black contractors get 2.56% for $25 million. That's about $2 million a year. Now, I don't want to belabor this, but the FBI is doing a corruption investigation of how all of our taxpayers' dollars, 887 million of it, ended up in the hands of this small group of white contractors. This has been going on for years, and black contractors are just living in poverty. The reason you have the problem you have in your ward, Ms. Richardson there, is because of poverty. There is no money because the city has given the money to the white contractors, and there's a remedy. You must have a minority set-aside program and also institute the Office of Minority Contract Compliance so we can watch this corruption that's been going on, Tom, under your watch for 20,
Mr.
25
Larry,
years.
you've now reached the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Geordi, Mr. Henry Geordi. Apologize.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board, for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I would like to get an answer from the city for the two complaints I filed. The first complaint I filed against the city's code enforcement unit after I attempted to file an illegal dumping complaint on November 19, 2018. The complaint was ignored and mishandled by each employee I engaged in its resolution. There was no sign that I had not presented the complaint timely or had otherwise caused the behavior the employees demonstrated. I did not know that code enforcement had closed my complaint on December 20th, 2018 with no action until I sent a May 5, 2019 letter to Mr. Terry Hall requesting its current status. During a telephone conversation and by way of explanation, Mr. Ed Garland said, "We dropped the ball." I agree, and my position is I should not be penalized for their malfeasance. On May 10, 2019, I sent a letter to Ms. Kendra Pruitt explaining my displeasure with code enforcement's misconduct, requested resurrection of my complaint, and asked for a copy of the illegal dumping ordinance. In that letter, I initially referred to Mr. Garland, but later incorrectly referred to him as Mr. Edwards. Nonetheless, I've not received a response. The second complaint was filed on March 29, 2019. In it, I allege, among other things, that the comments in opposition to the design of the 12th Street Jump Start project were ignored, and the city has violated Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by reintroducing the infamous segregation of 12th Street. White people north, black people south. The project extends farther north from 12th Street than it does south from 12th Street. It seems the project name is a camouflage for its intended purpose, which is to improve and enhance access to and from the UAMS complex on Cedar and Pine Streets.
After I was interviewed by the city's Title VI officer, Mrs. Karen Curry, on May 22nd, 2019, she indicated that she would strive to provide a response in about 2 weeks.
Mr. Jordan, you've now reached your time limit.
Thank you.
And
I have not received a response from her.
We'll make certain that you get a response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Jackcott, do you have a questions that? No. All right. All right. Taking everyone off. That being said, is there a motion to adjourn? Director Hendricks. Yes, ma'am.
I'll be brief, but Mr. Moore, I want to thank Wendell for fixing the bell, and had they not, I was going to bring my bell.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lamar and Mr. Wendell. We appreciate you. Director Adcock.
Yes, I received a letter today on the golf course at War Memorial. Mr. Carpenter, I understand an individual has made an application to have it declared a historic site, and at some point we said that it had to come from the city of Little Rock.
We didn't say that. That's the federal law, the owners.
Okay, well, he has sent me an acknowledgement that he has been told that that is incorrect, and I've suggested that he contact you about it. So if you will let us know after you talk to him if an individual can give a request that
No,
historic
only the owner of the
designation.
property can request the designation as an historical site.
Okay. I think his thought was that public property is different than individual property.
It's not.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go to adjournment, we have one more presentation from Mr. Luke Siri. Mr. Luke, let's give him a round of applause. He's from Troop 27. Just recently received his communications badge.
Sir, I'm so pleased to be in front of all you guys. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mayor.
Nice to meet you.
I'm here for my my merit badge, and I'm soon gonna be able to get a rank advancement. Very happy to be doing that. I'm with Troop 27, and I'm at Holy Souls, and I'm going to Catholic at the end of this summer. That's pretty much all.
Well, Mr. Luke, I just want to, before we give you a round of applause, I just want to commend you on coming up today and weathering through our board action here today. Is definitely part of our civic engagement, and congratulations on behalf of this entire board and City of Little Rock on receiving your communications badge and your other badge. Seems like you're running up the ladder as well as with Suntar, and so we want to make certain that we appreciate you and provide congratulations as well.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Adjourn.